is a three-time NCAA champion, an RAF champion, and I assume one day in the future probably UFC champion as well. It is always my great pleasure to catch up with Bo Nickal. Bo, how are you?
I'm doing well. About to get a workout in after this interview and feeling good. Just grateful to be alive.
Now, are you in Florida, or are you up towards Penn State?
I'm in Pennsylvania right now.
How are you feeling about Penn State wrestling? My Buckeyes, my Ohio State Buckeyes are doing pretty good, but you guys still scared the hell out of me.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the team's done really well so far this year. I think, just being around the guys, it's a super tight knit group, and they're really good at wrestling. They're wrestling very well. So, the big match will be Penn State, Ohio State, February 13th. So I'm looking forward to that one, and there's gonna be a lot of interesting matchups. But obviously, got to favor my boys in those matchups for sure.
Penn State's been so dominant. Like I said, as good as we've been, I'm just like, oh man, it's like a roadblock just staring me in the face when I look at it.
Yeah. It honestly, I'm hoping that teams can continue to improve and battle, because I, as a fan of the sport, enjoy when there's competitive matchups. So obviously there's a lot of good teams, and Ohio State does have a lot of really good guys this year. So as I mentioned, looking forward to that one for sure.
Absolutely. So, Bo, a lot I want to talk with you about, but of course, RAF kind of on the mind here. You've been with them, basically since day one. You are now their champion. Can I ask, like, when you went through the Olympic trials the last time and didn't go to the Olympics, and then you decided to make the move into MMA, did you kind of have in your head like wrestling was probably done for you, and now like you get to still do these really cool matches? And like, I love what RAF is doing.
Yeah, I feel that's exactly kind of what I went through. One of the biggest struggles for me transitioning from wrestling to MMA was knowing that, hey, this is probably it for my career. I'm probably never going to wrestle again. And because I want to, be focused on MMA and stuff. And it's hard to, do the grind of ranking series tournaments and world team trials, Olympic trials and stuff like that. It's not really realistic while having an MMA career as well. And then, there wasn't any other opportunities. And so, when RAF came about, that was something that, I looked at and saw as an amazing chance for me to get back on the mat and compete, and really just being involved with great people. Everybody in RAF that from the top down are people that I really enjoy being around, enjoy doing business with and hanging out with. So, for me, I'm really grateful that this is something that, I'm able to do. And it's a great opportunity for wrestlers around the whole world to be able to compete.
Absolutely. You're a bit of a hybrid, though, because obviously you're an incredibly accomplished wrestler, but also now you become like, obviously one of the top guys we talk about in mixed martial arts. And you've seen some of the MMA guys come over, and they've had a bit of a rough go. It's not been going great for a lot of the UFC guys. Where do you balance your head at in terms of your competition? Because like part of me says, like, you could get some of these UFC guys in a wrestling match would be kind of fun, but obviously you're the champion, so you're probably also going to get tougher matchups. So like, how do you fall in that? Because you kind of do live in both worlds.
I'm in a really interesting and unique position, I think, because the matchups that are competitive for me as a full-time fighter are very different than the matchups for other guys as full-time fighters, right? Like, I think most people want to see me compete against the best wrestlers in the world, which for myself, I feel the same. I feel like a lot of the guys in the UFC and in MMA, it's not a super competitive matchup for me. And, but at the same time, you have to respect the guys that are competing full time in wrestling and dedicating every single day to that. And I feel like, for me, out of respect for the sport, it's hard to put myself in that position as well. So, all in all, it is tough to get the right matchups. And I feel like for me, wanting to, again, be the best in the world at MMA, as well as, continue to compete in wrestling, it's been a balancing act. And, it's just, I don't have all the right answers, I guess, but I'm looking forward to just getting competitive matchups in both disciplines.
Can I ask, Bill, like, I'm curious, like, when you look at, being champion and where you're at, like, I'm very curious, like, if you could pick a dream match, like if there was a dream match to happen in RAF, who would it be? Like, in my head, I was like, man, it'd be cool if they bring over like Hamza to do a wrestling match. Like, that'd be kind of fun. Obviously he's got a wrestling background, and wrestling, I think it'd be fun. Obviously you're still, I know you've talked about fighting him in MMA, and I know you've recognized probably still a few fights away from something like that. But like, I was like, man, that'd be fun. But then you look at wrestling, like there are legit guys in wrestling who are champions who are in there. That'd be fun. So like, I'm curious for you, like, what would be your dream wrestling match in RAF?
Oh man, it's a tough question. There's so many guys that I would love to compete against. You mentioned Hamzat. That's a guy that I would love to get a wrestling match against. I think that for a dream matchup, a guy that was recently signed with RAF is Abdul Rashid Sajulayev. So that would be a fun match. I look at that like this guy, he's not only one of the best currently, but he's one of the best all time. So I have a ton of respect for him. And I think that he's a guy that, has proven himself on the world stage time and time again. And he's really, I think probably top 3, top 5 greatest wrestler ever. So, that'd be a really fun matchup for me. And I've watched a lot of his film. He's competed against, my teammates and stuff. And it would be an honor to share the mat with him.
I mean, that would be like a legendary match, right? Like Sajulayev, 2-time gold medalist. I mean, you could argue one of the greatest wrestlers ever, if we're being honest.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's incredibly skilled, accomplished, talented. He's a guy that's super dynamic. He's able to, score defensively, score offensively, score from parterre on the feet. And he's really, kind of a complete wrestler. So, for me to be able to compete against a guy like that, I think would be really fun.
I'm not sure if he's still there. I think he is. Kyle Snyder obviously has wrestled him a lot, and I know he's been at Penn State working a lot. So obviously a great guy you could have to work with to get ready for a guy like Sajulayev.
Yeah, Snyder. He's one of my main training partners, so I spent a good amount of time working with him. And definitely, if that matchup were to happen in the future, Kyle's the guy that I would, be working with quite a bit in preparation.
And I know the full-time job is still mixed martial arts. That's got to remain your priority. But can I ask, just in all seriousness, now that you've done this RAF thing and like been active with this, was there any dot a little bit in the back of your head looking at 2028 with the Olympics? Did that ever enter your mind? Because like when you went back to RAF, I was like, hey, there's a world because it's in America. And I know every American wrestler wants to represent America in the LA Olympics. Did that tinker in the back of your head a little bit?
I would say no. My wrestling coaches and a lot of the coaches with USA Wrestling have, continued to kind of talk to me about coming back. Since I started MMA, they always tease me a little bit here and there, like, hey, when are you coming back and stuff. And, for me, it's never really been something that I have been interested since transitioning over to MMA. I love fighting and it's so much fun for me. And I think that now with RAF, I truly believe in the next, year or two, RAF is going to be the biggest stage in the world for wrestling. I think that being the world champion in the RAF is going to be bigger than any other wrestling accomplishment. And it's going to be what the NFL is to football, what the, NBA is to basketball here very shortly. They've already put together such a crazy, sequence of events with, the first 5. And now I think the matchups are just getting better and better. And the people are getting more and more excited. So, I view RAF more as like the biggest show, in the sport at this point.
Yeah, 100%. I hate to bring up a sore subject for you, Bo. I know you talked about this a little bit, but I had a chance last week to talk to Yoel Romero. We were talking when he was fighting. He unfortunately had to drop out of his fight, but I asked him his opinion. And listen, he took ownership. He's like, hey, I missed weight. That's my fault, not on Bo. But he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't want to misquote him, but he basically said, I think Bo was more nervous about what people would think of him if he lost to me versus like actually just going in and having a wrestling match. Now he didn't talk trash. He wasn't saying bad things about you, anything like that, but he was just like, I think that's why he didn't want to wrestle at that point when I missed weight. I know I missed weight. It was on me, but he's like, I think he was more worried about what people would think if he wrestled me and lost. I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what he said is there's probably a little bit of truth to that. For me coming into that situation, I feel like I probably had more to lose than to gain just because I'm competing against a guy who's, in his 40s, who's older. And I just felt like, I was kind of already giving up, a decent amount. And then in addition to the weight miss, it just felt like, I'm like, man, it doesn't make sense for me to continue to like put myself out in this way. And so I feel like, obviously I was ready to go and compete had the weight been made. I think even if you would have been within a couple pounds, that would have been reasonable. If you'd have been, 2, 3, 4 pounds, then I can justify in my head, like, well, it's all right. Like I'll still go compete. But at that point he was, 7 over. I'm like, this is a lot of weight to give up. And, he's already, coming down from quite a bit heavier than what I'm coming down from. So, I guess, yeah, there's definitely truth to that. But I feel like at the end of the day, it's part of the sport is making weight, and, it is what it is. I feel like it was an unfortunate scenario. Again, I did everything I needed to do to be ready and prepared to compete, which Yoel acknowledged. So, had he kept up his end of the contract, we obviously would have competed. But yeah, it wasn't like, I'm the one that missed weight. So I feel like I was ready to go. I don't know really what else to say about it.
I mean, the reality is not that you need me to make excuse. The reality is you're already wrestling up in weight doing light heavyweight. Like, you didn't wrestle at that in college. Like, that's not your natural weight class. So it's like you were already, like, if he rehydrates, he's probably going to be like 40 pounds heavier than you by the time you got on the mats. Like, he's a huge dude, and that was already a weight class that is not technically your weight class in reality.
Yeah, I mean, I compete obviously in the UFC at 185 and wrestling at 205. So, competing already 20 pounds heavier than my actual weight class. And a lot of people say, oh, it's for fun or whatever, this or that. And the really reality of it is this is professional sports. Like, this isn't a charity matchup. This isn't just, get together and have a pickup game. This is professional sports. It's organized. It's, I think that, this is my livelihood, and this is the way that, I provide for my family and support us. So, it's not just like fun and games out there. Of course, I do have fun. Of course, I love the sport. I want to compete, these and that, but it also is a career for me. So, I handle it in that way, and look at it as a professional. And I think that a lot of people say, oh, just do this or that. Well, it's like, it's easy to say from the sidelines, but you're not the one that's out here that is putting their, career on the line, their health on the line. And yeah, I mean, I think that, everyone that I've talked to that's competed at a high level obviously respected my decision and confirmed to me that I made the right decision. And all the people that I trust said the same thing. I think the people that are critical of it are the ones that have never actually been there. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, though, we know RAF 6 has already kind of been booked up. We just saw Armin Sarukian get another match. That's going to be a lot of fun. Henry Cejudo coming back. So can I ask, like, do you have an idea when you are going to wrestle next? Because I know fight-wise, I assume you're still targeting June for the White House. That seems like the timeline for you to fight again. So are you hoping like RAF 7? Like, have you heard anything? Like, where are you at in terms of wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to get a matchup sometime soon. Whether that's before the White House or after, we'll see. But yeah, I think it's very realistic for me to get a match in the next couple months. But there's a lot up in the air right now, a lot being juggled. I'm trying to work, on matchups for White House card, trying to work on, matchups for RAF, and just continuing to train and get better. So, I have a lot of people on my team that are helping me organize that aspect of my career. So, I'm leaving a lot of trust in them, and just, things are going to work out the way they're supposed to. So, for me, I'm mostly focused day in, day out on improving my craft and getting better.
Absolutely. To that point, I got to ask you the White House card. I know Dana has said they're going to start making it this week. I think we all kind of assume you're going to be on there. What have you heard? Where are you at? And I know you mentioned Colby. I think that would be a tremendous fight. There's obviously a bit of a rivalry there, but like, where is your head at in terms of like, can I imagine like, does the opponent even matter? Just because like, I know you played golf with the president. I know you want to be there for that card. So like, kind of like two-part, like how I assume you believe you will be on the White House card, and what is the opponent looking like?
Yeah, obviously that's been the plan for me since after my last fight, and it'd be a great honor to be able to compete and fight on that card. It's just going to be so historic, opponent wise. I'm leaving it up to the UFC, but I think that the Colby matchup makes so much sense, especially considering the last RAF event, how everything went, and then him declaring he's going up to middleweight. That's just something that I feel like, it's the fight to make. And for me, most of the guys that I've competed, well, I'll say this, every single guy I've competed against up until this point in MMA, haven't really had like motivation to beat that person up specifically. Right. Like, it just, the opponent was just the opponent. And this one is definitely a little more personal, obviously, with a lot of the comments he's made and stuff. And I feel like it would be, it'd be fun to be able to compete against somebody that I actually want to fight, which that like there's just extra motivation there for me, which would make it a lot of fun.
Do you believe he would accept a fight against you? I guess that's the prime question. Do you think Colby would actually accept a fight against you?
The biggest problem is Colby's not dumb. Colby's a smart guy. So, he obviously, I don't think would want to accept a fight against me. I think he knows what I would do to him in a fight, and that would just not be really the best move for him in some ways, you know. And I think in other ways, you know, maybe he thinks that it's a win-win situation. Everybody would expect me to destroy him. He's also going to be able to compete on the White House card. So, you know, it's hard to say. I feel like he's probably in his mind, you know, juggling a lot of things as well. Like, is it worth it for me to go get beat up in front of the whole world, you know, on the White House card? But hey, I still get to be on there. I still get to talk my crap, get my attention, this or that, because you know, he's definitely a guy that's more focused on the negative than the positive. So, you know, it's hard to say. I think that's probably going to be the biggest obstacle, is just getting him to agree to it.
But ideally that would be the fight. But in the real world, it doesn't matter because you want to be on the White House card. So I can imagine they call and say, "Hey, we got this other guy, we got whatever." I assume for you, it's just being at the White House card, fighting in front of the president.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the fight, the event that I want to be a part of. So, you know, regardless of the opponent, we'll figure it out.
And real quick before I get you out of here, Bill, I wanted to ask you this question because I know you saw I did an interview with your coach, Mike Brown. We were talking about the loss to RDR and then coming back, getting the knockout over Rodolfo Vieira. And he said, honestly, I know you talked about this. He said, you know, we all knew it was probably too much too soon, but hey, that's the sport. Bo's getting paid. They're going to put him in big fights. It's just what it is. And I know you said, listen, yeah, it's the reality of that. Can I ask you, obviously, I know you talked about Gable Steveson coming in and he's got a lot of hype behind him. Could I ask you, Bill, like, what kind of advice would you give a guy like that who I think is walking a very similar path to yourself? A lot of hype. Seems like he's going to be in the UFC pretty soon, but he's only got like 2 fights of experience. You literally you had 2 fights, Contender Series, and boom, you're on main cards of pay-per-view. So like there was no real evolution. You just had to jump right in the fire. So I'm curious, like, what kind of advice would you give a guy like Gable as he kind of walks a similar path to you?
Yeah, you know, it's tough to say, right? Like, I think that for my career, every decision that we made, you know, we did the best with what we could and the information that we had, right? Like, I think that, you know, obviously my career was going way faster than I expected, than my coaches expected, but I was also, you know, finishing everybody in the first or second round. You know, I had 1 decision win, and it was against a guy in Paul Craig that's beaten former champions. So like, it's tough to say or predict without, you know, knowing the future, which nobody does. And in regards to Gable, I would say like, the career stuff and everything it's gonna work out the way it's supposed to. Just continue to focus on getting better at fighting, getting better at your sport, being disciplined, staying committed to your goals. Like, regardless of, you know, who you fight, what's the opponent, how fast your career is moving. Like, I think that it's really more just about continuing to grow and improve and get better. And you can always play the, you know, what if game, or, you know, hindsight's always 2020, or, you know, people try to politic their way into certain, you know, matchups, this, that, blah, blah, blah. And I look at it like other people can worry about that. For me, I'm worried about just improving, getting better as a fighter, growing as a person every single day, and being present. So for him, I would just say the same thing, right? Like, just focus on getting better at fighting, and whatever the matchups are, you know, you'll figure it out. If you know, win or lose a fight, you're still Gable Steveson. So, you know, you just got to be yourself and continue to improve.
Well, remember, there's guys like me, your day one UFC. I was like, he beats Israel Adesanya today. You probably remember your debut. I was like on the horn saying, he's going to beat Israel Adesanya today. I know I should slow down. Give you time to evolve and grow, Bo. You're still growing as an athlete, still growing as a fighter. You'll get there, but, you know, it takes a little bit more time than the insane person here saying, oh, yeah, he'd beat Israel Adesanya on day 1 of the UFC.
Yeah, you know, I think that it's interesting. One of the comments that I made early in my career that a lot of people gave me backlash on, which I think it was misunderstood, was I talked about fighting Hamzat and being a minus 1,000 favorite against him when I fought him. And obviously, you know, people can put their own spin on that. But really what I meant about that was how crazy the odds were for all my fights, right? Like, it wasn't about saying like, oh, I'm going to beat Hamzat 10 times out of 10. Like, this guy is easy. I never thought that. I never felt like, you know, this guy wouldn't be a challenge, but I felt like the mania of the way that the odds were, and kind of how just crazy the view of me and the hype was at one point. I was like, this is insane. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the view once I get there. And I think people obviously took that as a dig to him, but I think everybody, you know, it's hard. It's like, obviously some people say I suck. Some people, you know, thought coming in my first fight in the UFC, I could be the champion. like right then and there. And reality is it's probably somewhere in the middle. You know, my view is, again, I'm just going to continue to improve and get better. And I'm not doing this because I want the results. I'm doing this because I love the process. And that's what's carrying me through, you know, wins, losses, tough days in training, easy days in training, success is failure. It's just focusing on the process, continue to improve and get better, and enjoying what I'm doing.
Well, I have no doubt you're going to get there one day. I think your talent is undeniable. Obviously, as a wrestling guy, I love seeing the success you've had. So, Bo, thank you for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it. Obviously, have fun wrestling, have fun training, and hopefully next time we talk or next time we hear is either RAF wrestling match or White House match. We hear one of the two announcements.
Absolutely. Now, thank you for your time. I appreciate you.